Welcome everybody to Government Secrets with Lee Crabb, episode I want to say 19.
Episode he wants to say 19.
I think it's 19, but I'm not sure. Well, what we're gonna have a fun episode. Before we we check in, I do have a car accident update. But before we get into that, what are we going to talk about today?
I mean, that's why 70% of the people are tuning in to get the car accident update, the Leaf update.
Leaf. So here's what we're going to discuss today. Leaf update. I want to talk about the U.S. involvement in the Chinese Civil War. That's something I just learned about. What do you want to discuss today, Lee?
Oh, man, this is a big one. I want to go into all of the evidence that we did not actually need to drop the atomic bombs.
Oh, my God.
It is intense.
Oh, wow.
So yeah.
It's going to be a fun one. It sounds like.
Upbeat. Yeah. I mean, of the topics we discuss, I feel like discussing how we likely obliterated, I think, whatever it is, 300, 400,000 people just for our own amusement. I think that's up there on our topic list. I think that's one of the good ones.
Wow. America, the more we do this show, America keeps getting better. You know what I'm saying? That's what the show, isn't it? What don't you every week you go, God, you know what? America really is amazing. Like
I think much like a movie, a good movie, right at the end of our podcast, like the final episode of the podcast, we're going to redeem America. It's going to be, it was good all along.
Our final secret on episode 200 or whatever will be actually America has been amazing this whole time. That's one secret.
Absolutely.
I will say I have been laughing for a full week at unsweetened cashew milk.
I mean, that would be the most gut-wrenching CD review, album review that you could possibly get. I mean, that's a take your life album review.
That really is like I'm leaving. Not only am I leaving show business, I'm leaving this life. I've had it. And, I went through this because I was like, I was going through all of the milks. And
so you're not saying you have extra time on your hands, do you, Graham? I was going through all of the milks.
I did extensive research on all of the milks this week, Lee, because I think it's important. And I realized that unsweetened cashew milk is the John Tesh of milks. If you think about it. None of the goat milk.
Who is that more hurtful? Is that more hurtful to cashew milk or is that more hurtful to John Tesh? It's a tough call.
People who work in the cashew milk industry right now are probably fuming of what I just said. Just like, I think it might be more. Is it more? I think it might be more hurtful to cashew milk.
I think absolutely. I know that if we include this portion in the podcast, this beginning chit chat, they can't see this, which could be upsetting to them. But I think this is the most chest you and I have shown on the show.
Oh, you and I.
Which has to do with comments we got from viewers saying they wanted more chest.
Well, it was the comment, and please, everybody, if you're listening, please leave positive comments. We got a lot of great reviews in iTunes and Spotify, but one of them that stood out to me was more Burt Reynolds. And so that's how we decided to just go, kind of open collar, you know what I mean?
Open it up, free it up, yeah.
Free it up like a couple of guys on a yacht, you know what I mean? Just yachting around, cashew milking their way through the day, you know what I'm saying?
Well, I mean, ever since the pandemic began, I decided I was going to let the chest hair grow out. I'm growing it out. Because I can't go to my guy. I can't go to my guy.
You're a chest hair guy.
You're a chest hair guy. So I got to grow it out. What choice do you have?
Chest hair guy that... couple of questions there. Don't know that we have time to get into it, but I'm glad that you have a chest hair guy.
Well, it is a government secret, so it fits on the show. It fits.
Uncovering on government secrets, Lee's chest hair guy and the long sordid history of CIA chest hair guys. It's probably a CIA Operation Chest Hair Guy or Project Wax Chest or something like that.
Yeah.
I'm sure the CIA has been neck deep in that. All right. Well, so let's get into first of all, Leaf update. By the way, I got some new software. I don't know if you heard the new sound effects I just added. So I've been playing around with new sound effects.
Oh, you got to pay a lot extra for those.
These are expensive.
Just to get the rights, yeah.
It's the most expensive part of our show is the sound effects. Like that right there was $5,000. That was $5,000.
$5,000 that he pays directly to the Foley artist in the other room. He's next door. Graham goes over there, slides the money under the door, and just holds a mic up to the outside of the door where the guy goes, pow, 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 pow.
Yes. Well, he used to be my chest hair guy, but so I was trying to find work for him since the pandemic. We can't do chest hair. So now he's my through the door Foley guy. Leaf update. I got a call yesterday from the insurance company. Yes, the car has been totaled. They gave it the total tag.
Nice. Good. Congrats. Your car's finally been totaled. Congrats.
Thank you. It's really, I went out to dinner. I celebrated. It was really, I bought myself some jewelry. It was exciting.
I'd like to thank all the people who got me here, who helped me along the way.
It's, I've never owned a car for 2 months and then I just had it get totaled. So this was a big day for me. And so right now we're waiting on, and I had to finance part of the car. I put some money down. So I called my, the credit union that did the car loan, and they're like, well, once they come up with, so the guy wouldn't leave an amount on my voicemail. We played phone tag. So I didn't get we're going to give you this amount. It's just like, it's totaled.
He was like, yeah, we're actually going to give you dollars. It's amazing.
Yes.
Just send me a signature and I'll fill in the contract.
Yeah. I really was like, and then weird that we kept playing phone tag. Like I just can't, there's a couple of key questions I can't seem to get answered. And so somebody from another department, this is now the third department, I guess I'm getting passed off to. So there's the open the claims people. Then there's the determining how much damage department. And then there's
the too busy to return your calls department. It took a while to get to them.
Then there's the we're going to cut you the smallest check possible department. And so yeah, they got it. And because technically the credit union owns the title. So we're so not out of the woods with this yet because they have to pay off the bank. And hopefully then I'll get some left over since I put money down on this. And then the bank has to release the title after the bank gets their money for them to take the car and sell it.
Doesn't this, even though I wasn't old enough to remember it, doesn't this make you miss like the 70s and 80s when you just handed a guy a sack of cash in a back alley and he was like, here's your new car. And that was just, that was the entirety of how the whole system worked. There was nothing else. No one had even come up with other things that have to happen.
I need to back up here. So your interpretation of 70s back alley car sales, is that what you think this is like?
I think though, I'm assuming that's how most car lots worked back then.
There was no contracts in the 70s.
No. All this insurance on top of insurance on top of insurance. No. You could kill a guy and it was legal as long as the body didn't show up on the doorstep of the police station. Basically,
yes. You're amazing that government secret hasn't been talked about. The show is Lee's interpretation is a Wild West murder spree to get cars. Very Bonnie and Clyde like. Yeah. You drove around and you shot people and you took the cars. So I wish it was back in those days too.
I do. We all do. Simpler times.
I'm guessing we have another week. Hopefully next week's episode, we will have a Leaf wrap up, but I don't know. I don't know. I'm still in the rental car. That's where we're at.
We all wish you luck, Graham.
And may God have mercy on your soul.
I think you should, maybe the next episode should just be you airing the audio of these phone calls to the insurance company.
I think we might have to do that. I think we might have those calls so we can have a little extra content. Well, I don't know. Why don't we go into the fun? We didn't need to use the atomic bomb.
Yeah, it's an interesting and complicated story because it's not just about the atomic bomb. There's a little bit of racism in there, as you might have imagined.
Yay! Secrets racism.
There's also we could have had a different president that I'm going to throw into the mix.
What?
Yeah, we were 5 feet away from having a different president, and I'll explain what the fuck that means in a minute. So I'm getting all this information from the Untold History of the United States. It's by Oliver Stone. You might have heard of him, and Peter Kuznick, and they do an incredible job. It's a great book. But so we got to back up. To get to the atomic bombs, we got to back up and figure out how did Truman end up in the spot that he was the one dropping those bombs. And, he was FDR's VP, but what happened is FDR, fading in health. He's running for his 4th term.
Right.
And they have the National Convention, Democratic National Convention, another Democratic National Convention in Chicago. Those always seem to go great.
My hometown loves a good corrupt Democratic convention.
Oh man, do they ever. So as they write in the book, and I'm going to be skipping around here like I'm reading from the Bible or something, but the real contest was over the vice presidency. Henry Wallace had incurred the wrath of the party conservatives by calling for a worldwide people's revolution, towards which in the United States and Soviet Union would work together. That's a quote from Henry Wallace. And what makes you think that after saying something like that, you wouldn't be beloved by the business interests of America?
I would think the war machine would be like, you, sir, have a lifetime membership. Here you go. Here's a down comforter.
Yeah. And he was also championing the cause of labor unions, women, African Americans, and the victims of European colonialism. His enemies, who knows why, included Wall Street bankers, anti-union business interests, Southern segregationists, and defenders of British and French colonialism. So basically everyone that ruled America.
All of the evil. Basically the evil people were lined up to not like Wallace.
So imagine you've got let's just say somewhat of a Bernie Sanders, although this guy, Henry Wallace, sounds much more leftist and aggressive than Bernie Sanders. But and he looks like he's going to be on the ticket to run with Roosevelt, but this is Roosevelt's final term. They're not even sure he's going to survive the term. And the Gallup poll showed that 57% of Democrats wanted Wallace. So the business interests got together and knew they needed to stop Wallace from getting on this ticket because he could end up being president if he gets on this ticket and if FDR dies. So they start working on putting in a little-known, little-loved senator named Harry Truman, who in one of the polls got 2% of the vote. 2% wanted Truman to be the VP.
Now, it's weird. Real quick, it's I don't know. Something's popping into my mind of like somebody who wasn't polling well in a primary. They picked a VP that couldn't even make it to the Iowa caucus. Anyway, I don't know. I'm just grabbing at straws. But go ahead.
Someone, who was it? It was Left for Dead on his 3rd presidential run, still hadn't won a state until the entire Democratic machinery decided they had to put him forward in order to stop the progressive.
But the most popular guy was, wanting to give people Medicare for all and some of the wars. God, I feel like this
sounds a little deja vu.
Familiar. I don't know.
Sounds a little deja vu. And here's why I don't like to read history, because you realize we've done all this before. But
it is maddening. This show mainly is like, oh, we could have had it 1,000 times better. We're still doing it the same dumb evil way. Anyway.
Right. So, and I'll get to what happened to Wallace in a second, but this is going to come in useful in a moment. In the book, they start to go into Truman and his past and who he was. And you'll be happy to hear Truman, long-time fan of out-and-out racism. Truman actually tried to join the Ku Klux Klan. He actually sent a $10 check at age, I think, 38, I think. Sent a $10 check, which, a lot of money back then, to the Klan, but was denied membership because he wouldn't promise to stop hiring Catholics.
Oh, well, I mean, first of all, I can't blame the Klan because I was raised Catholic. You don't want to hire it. We're just bad. We're not solid employees. Always live in Lent and have dust on our head, and it's all crazy.
But I'd love to see the form they sent him, and he's like, hate blacks, check. Hate Jews, check. Don't hire Catholics. Oh. But where's the club for me?
And somewhere there's a centrist going, see, he wasn't that bad. He hired Catholics, right?
So that fact about Truman will come into play a little later. But as I said, there was a Gallup poll, 65% of Democrats wanted Henry Wallace, 2% wanted Truman. And so then the night before the final day of the convention, there's kind of an uproar in the convention where there's people, the people are demanding Wallace. They can tell that the kind of ruling establishment of the party does not want Wallace. And Florida Senator Claude Pepper realized that if he got Wallace's name into nomination that night, Wallace would sweep the convention. He'd be unstoppable to get the VP slot under FDR. So Pepper was trying to fight his way to the microphone. And back then, all you had to do was get to the mic and say the guy's name in nomination, and that was it. And so, to get it nominated, not to win it, but to get nominated. So he's fighting through the crowd to try and get up there and nominate Wallace. And at that point, Mayor Kelly realized that Pepper was almost to the mic. So he rushes ahead of him to the microphone, declares there's a fire hazard, and they must adjourn for the night.
Oh.
And shuts off proceedings for the evening. By the following day, the business interests had succeeded in offering all kinds of bribes to the people they needed to bribe. We'll get this done for you. We'll get that done for you. And the following day, Truman is put in as the VP.
That is not heartbreaking at all. That's just... and the thing is, too, to add to this, and I would tell people if they haven't read this book, they also made this into a Netflix series, which is where I saw it, and I would highly recommend watching it. One of the things, too, FDR wrote a letter to the Democrat convention ahead of this 1940 convention saying, don't move to the right, stay left. The reason we keep winning is because we've implemented all these lefty socialist. That's why FDR was so popular. They had to vote term limits. They didn't have term limits prior to FDR. Yep. And he said, don't do this. Don't do this. We should get Wallace. I mean, back then, the party picked it. He didn't really just get to go, oh, I want this person.
Well, and they say in here that FDR, realizing his health was fading, his power in the party was fading because they figured he's not long for this world. And he knew he needed these corrupt party bosses to win his election. So he gave in on the Wallace. He said, all right, give me whatever, VP. So he just decided he didn't have that fight in him. Yeah.
That doesn't sound familiar either. Anyway.
So, all right. Obviously, Truman gets, and who knows what would have been different if Wallace had gotten in there. FDR then dies in April 1945. Truman becomes president. And then, so let's get over to the bomb. so you have, obviously, Germany was done by that point, and it's just Japan that we're continuing to fight. And they start in this book, they start going over everybody saying that Japan, not only was Japan done, but Japan knew they were done. They knew they didn't have the energy or the fighting ability to win this war. That thought wasn't in their head. And so the question is, why then did Japan continue to fight and not just surrender? And there's several pieces of very clear evidence that what was stopping them from surrendering was the fact that Truman had rushed out and the U.S. had rushed out and said that they would accept only unlimited surrender, the surrender, unconditional surrender with no stipulations. And it seems key that the Japanese needed one stipulation, that the emperor would not be dethroned and hanged. To them, as they say in the book, that for the Japanese, the emperor culturally was nearly like a Christ figure. Right. And at that time, him getting hanged for war crimes or whatever would be the equivalent of nailing Christ to the cross. And the Japanese soldiers would rather all die, and many of them did commit suicide rather than surrender, but would rather all die than allow that to happen. So really, that was the only thing keeping Japan from surrendering, is just this term unconditional surrender. If the U.S. had said, you get to keep your emperor, we just want this war over, they would have. There's tons of evidence showing they would have accepted that. And the U.S. largely knew this. So yeah, and then they go through several letters and like cables and things that show that the Japan was ready for peace. I mean, Japan is sending all of these signs out that they're ready for peace, they're ready for surrender. They just need promises that the emperor won't be dethroned and killed. And the other note is that what they feared more than this bomb was the Soviet Union getting into the battle. Because they knew that would spell their end. They knew they couldn't handle another front with the Soviet Union. And so they feared that more than the bomb. So the bomb wasn't really the actual thing, stopping them from surrendering or getting them to surrender at any point. And so then the question becomes, if they were ready to surrender, the question becomes, why, under those circumstances, would the U.S. not accept a surrender? Why would they use 2 atomic bombs against an almost helpless population that could not win this war? And in order to understand that, you have to go back to the racism of Truman and the racism in America. The Japanese were viewed differently than the Germans, even back in that time. Germans were viewed as wrongheaded and kind of horrible, but Japanese, most of the racist stuff being said about Japanese was like they weren't human. Yeah. I mean, they were being called, rats and monkeys and snakes and all these things that make them a vermin, all these things that make them less than human. Go ahead.
Yeah, and then as evident by the Japanese internment camps, to my knowledge, we didn't have many German internment camps. I mean, I'm sure German Americans were not treated well during World War II.
I actually remember hearing something about one of them. And there was some sort of German internment camp in the U.S., and they were treated better than U.S. prisoners. They were treated very well. And it comes down to that racism.
Yeah, and again, much of the Japanese internment camps was fueled by racism, and was also they saw it as an opportunity for a land grab. Japanese Americans who owned businesses and had property, we got to take, sorry, and especially in California, where there was in Northern California, San Francisco, where there was a high Japanese population, and in Southern California, and they used it to take their land, and so it was highly racist. Again, the Germans were bad, but they just need to get their minds right, where, like you said, the Japanese were just viewed as just subhuman rats. And the way they were even written in or drawn in the propaganda, right? they were always like buck-toothed or looking like animals, while the Germans were just they were drawn as menacing and bad. Like Hitler was never drawn in a positive light, neither were the Nazis, but they weren't drawn subhuman, where the Japanese in the propaganda they were looked at as subhuman.
Yeah, and with the Japanese internment camps, there was no evidence that any of these Japanese Americans were somehow involved in infiltrating America, in pro-Japanese war efforts. And the U.S. just grabbed them all up, put them in awful camps, and they lost like all of their property, and basically, except for a suitcase they could bring with them. I mean, it'd be like someone walking into your house saying, this house is now whoever feels like grabbing it, that it's not yours anymore, and you're going off to this camp. They had nothing. Yeah.
Yep. And again, and then when the war ended, they had to kind of start from scratch.
Yeah. So here's another, in case Truman sending a check to the KKK to try and join wasn't enough to evidence his racism. Here's a quote from I love that this is written to his future wife, and this is in a letter where he's courting her. So this is kind of a love letter, and he's just you're just looking for conversation. You just look at how do I win her over just with the daily chit chat? He says, quote, "I think one man is as good as another, so long as he's honest and decent and not an inward or a Chinaman." It goes on to say, "Uncle Will says that the Lord made a white man of dust, an inward from mud, then threw up what was left, and it came down a Chinaman. He does hate Chinese and Japs. So do I." And this is perhaps my favorite sentence. "It is race prejudice, I guess. You think?"
Boy, there's nothing that sweet talks a lady more than just overt racism. You know what I mean? Anytime I've ever sweet talked a lady, I'm always like, hey, I'm part of the master race. Like it's just, I know. And that was so permissible. And then the Truman apologist, because I've heard this before. I heard he would throw the N-word around like nothing.
Yeah.
And then the Truman apologists always say, yeah, but I mean, his policies weren't as bad as his personal. And it's like, I think they sort of influenced it a little bit. I mean, it's like, it's not like,
Well, and these people are politicians for a reason. If he did positive stuff for, black people in America, it was because he saw it as a useful political tool.
Right. And you think like, gee, did Henry Wallace have any of those letters? No, his love letters.
Yeah.
Like, I really want to pull the working man out and help everyday Americans. And then you and I can fall in love in a field of socialist bliss. It's
Listen, but that type of letter is not going to put many backs on mattresses. All right. Let's be honest. Let's be honest.
Women hate a man that really is trying to make the world a better place. They really turn off. It's a big turn off. That's why I'm single. If I was out just saying evil shit, I'd have ladies, knocking on my door. If I was just like, yeah, I'm Alex Jones or whatever crazy shit, it'd be a different story.
Oh man, yeah. Nothing gets me harder than hearing a lady who loves her Alex Jones. I see that Alex Jones bumper sticker on the back of a car and whew.
Oh, I like a good turn-on lady. I'm like, oh, she's crazy as the day is long. I love it. This will be fantastic.
Okay, so I'm not going to go into all of the quotes and everything showing that Japan was essentially defeated. There was no reason to use these bombs. But then there also is evidence that one of the reasons besides viewing Japanese people as not as subhuman, perhaps the real reason that Truman and the rest wanted to use the bomb was to make Russia manageable. And and pressure Russia to show our power over Russia, even though they were our allies in World War II. We still wanted, coming out of World War II, to just basically have our boot on their throat. And in case people need remembering, we'll probably cover this in another government secrets down the road. In case people need remembering, Russia lost 20 million people in World War II. We lost something like 250,000, I think,
We
300,000.
400 and roughly 419,000 people. If you count everybody, including the 3,000 or 4,000 we lost in Pearl Harbor, many of them civilians, we lost about 415,000 service members.
Okay, so you're saying less than 20 million.
Just a hair. Yeah, just a hair less.
Okay, so that seems to be the real reason. By the way, at this point, because at this point, the scientists who helped create the bomb knew that Germany was defeated, so Germany couldn't. For a lot of the race, or the earlier race to the bomb, was Germany's going to get it first, right. And then Germany is defeated, and we know they're not going to get the bomb, and so these scientists start realizing also that Japan is about to crumble. And they just view what this bomb could do as horrifying. So 155 scientists at Chicago's Met Lab in the uranium plant at Oak Ridge signed a petition saying not to use the bomb. It probably would have been signed by more, but they stopped it from circulating with other scientists. Reports poured in that Japan wanted to surrender. And then even General Eisenhower, when asked his opinion, said he was against using the bomb on 2 counts. First, the Japanese were already ready to surrender, and it wasn't necessary to hit them with that awful thing. Second, I hated to see our country be the first to use such a weapon. So that's General Eisenhower. General MacArthur considered the bomb, quote, completely unnecessary from a military point of view. And when he learned that the U.S. was going to use it, despite the fact he was very involved in fighting the Japanese, he was the commander of the Allied forces in the Pacific. When he heard that we were going to use the bomb, he found it horrifying and depressing because he said the Japanese were already defeated. So then on August 5th, we dropped the bomb.
That's my birthday, by the way.
Hey, I heard that's why they dropped it then.
Because they knew, boy, about 25 years from now, this guy is going to be just a train wreck. So let's honor his upcoming birthday.
Yeah, they were planning ahead. So it totally destroys Hiroshima. 300,000 civilians, 43,000 soldiers, 45,000 Korean slave laborers. So they drop it on Hiroshima, and then it's like, and here's a quote from the chief prosecutor of the Nuremberg trials. Quote, "The rights and wrongs of Hiroshima are debatable. They're not really, but okay. Are debatable, but I have never heard a plausible justification for Nagasaki."
Right.
I mean, the idea that one was needed I suppose some people could argue some points, sure. But the idea that a second one was needed there's just no one has been able to put forward a good justification for it. And really, what I'm not getting into the details of is there was a real rush, actually, to use these bombs before Japan could surrender and before the final peace agreements with Russia about who was going, how we were divvying up the world and everything, because we wanted it to basically threaten Russia. Right. Was kind of the biggest reason, and because if Japanese aren't human, then why not see how much damage you can do?
Right. And there was also this, I remember I was taught this in history class in high school, that the Japanese said they're never going to surrender. So we would have, the argument was always made, well, we would have had to commit another 500,000, dead Americans would have had to fight in a long, protracted ground war to overtake mainland Japan, right? Because we were fighting the Japanese up through the Philippines and the Solomon Islands and all that, right? Actually, my uncle fought in the Marines in that at the end of World War II. So that was that was what we were always told, right? Again, more lies told to the American people that the Japanese were like, we're not surrendering no matter what. And we just didn't, this brought them to their knees, which obviously we know was a lie. There was communiques, like you said, of the Japanese saying, we're done. We want to surrender. We're just not giving up the emperor. And it was like, again, even if that was true, like we didn't want to commit and we didn't want to more ground, lose more American service members fighting, that, like you said, you can kind of make that argument for Hiroshima. Then there's no then you did it. You don't need to do another city 2-3 days later.
Right. Kill hundreds of thousands. And the argument that one of the main arguments they use to justify it nowadays is they say, well, and even right afterwards was, well, how many soldiers did we save by dropping those bombs? And the answer is not really, because they were ready to surrender. You really didn't save that many soldiers. And also, you needed that level of racism in order to justify obliterating so many innocent civilians. Because if you look, the book makes the argument that if you look at Germany, yes, a lot of innocent civilians were bombed, and especially there's some horrific examples like Dresden. Yeah. But mostly the majority of times that the U.S. was bombing, they were going after strategic locations or places they thought there were a lot of German soldiers or those type of things. Whereas when we dropped these atomic bombs, we knew that the vast, vast majority of those who were going to be obliterated were not going to be soldiers.
Yes. Well, the other thing too, I mean, Dresden, even again, that's more just sort of subtle lies by the United States. Is Dresden? Well, there was factories there. Dresden was a test site for the atomic bomb. They bombed it in 4 corners at the same time to create a firestorm, basically, to see what that would. They're like, we can kind of get an idea of what the atomic bomb will be. So that's one of the things why they just set Dresden on fire, was they're like, let's see what this actually looks like. Because if we hit 4 areas at the same time really hard, it'll create this firestorm similar to the detonation of an atomic bomb. So even that was just more just like, oh, well, and even to point out the accuracy of the racism, there was some like outcry, like, wow, that's not good what we did to the citizens of Germany and Dresden. But people were like, wow, that was a little out of line with Dresden. And then nobody, not a lot of people felt that way about Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
There was a lot less. Yeah.
Yeah. Because it was just like, oh, they're subhuman. So they're all crazy, subhuman people that just worship their crazy emperor. So it's all right what we did.
And the other amazing thing is, you'd think the most indoctrinated into this idea, the people that saw their fellow soldiers, U.S. soldiers being killed in these battles, the most indoctrinated, the most hardcore would be the ones who were in the plane dropping the bombs, the generals of all of these forces at the time. And in fact, they show all these quotes. Most of the people on the planes that dropped these bombs said it was the most horrific thing they've ever seen. They're quoted as saying afterwards, as they're watching the mushroom cloud come up, that, oh my God, what have we done? We've opened the gates of hell. I mean, most of these people involved in this realized how horrific it was afterwards. And then they say 6 of the 7 5-star officers who received their final star. So these are the top level generals who received their final star in World War II. So it's Generals MacArthur, Eisenhower, Arnold, and Admirals Leahy, King, and Nimitz all rejected the idea that atomic bombs were needed to end the war. Almost the entirety of the top generals.
Yes. Yeah.
But of course they didn't, it says sadly, they didn't press their case. They more just kind of quietly have been quoted in their memoirs and things like that later saying, yeah, we really didn't need to do that. And then the final thing, I'll wrap this up with this. The book says the person who did the most to try and stop the confrontation with the Soviet Union and the confrontation with the Soviet Union was Henry Wallace. But his part has largely been lost to history. Few people remember how close Wallace came to getting the vice presidential nomination in Chicago. which would have meant he would have been president, and how different could the world have been if he'd been president, not Truman? Would the atomic bomb still have been used in World War II? Could we have avoided the nuclear arms race and perhaps even the Cold War? It's tough to know. But there you have it. The DNC rigging the convention yet again.
It's just their long, rich history of screwing over progressives. So anybody right now thinks we can reform the Democratic Party from within. It's been going on for 80 years. So, I mean, good luck. But to my government secret segment number 3, boop, 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 actually ties in to the end of World War II and what we did. I want to talk about the Chinese Civil War. Now, we talked about it a couple episodes ago where I did the top 10 fascists that when America went into business with. Remember
yes.
episode?
Yes.
So, I want to just bring this up.
By the way, everyone, much of what we talk about on Government Secrets is evergreen. So if you're enjoying this, you should go back and listen to the old ones, because they're not going to feel old to you. They're going to feel new.
The secrets and lies of this country live on forever. So please enjoy them. So if remember, we did the top 10. Number 7 was China. And this is something I literally didn't know.
I know nothing about the history of China.
So the Chinese, just a little back history. The Chinese Civil War actually started in the early 1920s, I believe, before even World War II started, right? So the Qing dynasty was the last dynasty to rule China, and I think it ended around 1911. And so there was a power vacuum. And you had Chiang Kai-shek of the Kuomintang and the People's Party, the Communist Party, led by Mao Zedong, basically. That was the two people that started fighting with each other. And they even worked together at a certain point, but then they started fighting with each other. And the Chinese Civil War, basically, I want to make sure I get these dates right.
I believe it was 1612.
Well, it went from 1927 to 1936 and then stopped. Basically because that was when the Japanese were really starting, in the mid 30s is when obviously Germany and Japan and even Italy to some extent were really, but in Asia, that was when Japan, the Japanese Empire, was really starting to flex its muscles in 1936. So the Civil War kind of ended where they're like, well, we need to fight this problem first. And then it literally picked back up in 1945.
So they were like, let's put it on hold for this World War thing.
Yeah.
And then they get to the end of that and they're like, I remember, I fucking hate you.
That's right. Now that Japan's been wiped out due to racism, let's go. So it was fought between the Kuomintang was the KMT and the Communist Party of China, which is the CPC. And again, it was the group was led by Chiang Kai-shek throughout the Civil War, and there were several key generals. The Communist Party, of course, was led by Mao Zedong. And so what happened in 1945? So
that's actually when I lost my virginity. Remember it well.
League Camps virginity loss 1945.
He's older than he looks.
Lee Camp, 90 years old. So this is the crazy part, and this is when you read, like in the last segment, you read that book, that The Untold History of the United States, or Howard Zinn's book. And also Malcolm X talked about how, he said this in a quote back in the 60s, obviously. He said, like, look, during the war, China and Russia were our allies during World War II. And then the media said it was great. They made movies. There's a movie where Gregory Peck plays this Russian revolutionary that's working with the GIs, and Stalin is portrayed as this grandfatherly figure. And then the minute the World War II is over, Russia's our enemy, right? Same with China. Yeah. So this is what happened. So what we did then in 1945, and again, this is our boy Truman, another great reason to love Truman instead of Wallace. Wallace, I doubt, would have done this. We had 100,000 U.S. troops fighting with Chiang Kai-shek, who was a crazy fascist. Not that Mao Zedong was some sort of, saint, but again, China was our ally. And then the minute it looks like, okay, the war's ending, suddenly
crush communism,
crush it. Just the same way, like you said, the dropping of the bomb in Hiroshima and Nagasaki was to put fear into the Soviets. So, and of course, then Russia, this is our first like proxy war.
Right.
Russia was backing the Chinese Communist Party. And we spent, oh my God, with American support in 1945, Chiang Kai-shek took control of China's major cities. However, the CPC was heavily funded by the Soviet Union and quickly gained support in the rural areas. So I want to bring this up. A steady stream of U.S. advisors in China warned that the U.S. aid was being stolen by Chiang Kai-shek. So we helped this guy, and he also stole from us. Fantastic. We get in bed with great people. I mean, just the Saudi family.
Turns out when you're always making deals with corrupt, murderous motherfuckers, they're often going to turn on you. They're often not going to be your buddy.
Who saw it coming? I mean, this corrupt murder. I did a deal with the corrupt murderous guy, and then he ended up being corrupt and murderous. Like
I thought he had an understanding. Truman sent him some of his love letters.
Saying, we think you're less than mud people or whatever. Why wouldn't they?
Why didn't that help?
I didn't get it. Truman's love letters. I don't get why nobody liked. They're so nice. So a steady stream of U.S. advisors in China warned that the U.S. aid was being stolen by Chiang and his cronies. Some even sold it to the Japanese. So, because Chiang Kai-shek was working with the Japanese to fight the Chinese communism, and Japan, who we just bombed with the most horrific weapon that 5 of 6 generals said we never should have used. It was awful. We released the gates of hell. We are now working with the Japanese. This is how crazy we got to fight communism. And so Japan, we were just fighting them. They bombed us in 1941. We dropped the worst weapons ever. But now communism, at the end of the day, we got to line up with whomever. Like, this made me, I don't know what makes me more angry, how they screwed over Wallace or the fact that then Truman is doing this, like this wave of America.
You want to believe that we must have been at war with these people because we found them so detestable and what they were doing was so horrible. And then if that's true, you don't the moment later ally with them.
I know, right? So that's the case that was made, and that was true, why. And that was also kind of what was made why we didn't hold the Japanese government as accountable as we did the Germans. There weren't really basically Nuremberg trials because the Japanese military did commit acts of genocide. They did it against the Philippines. They did it against the Chinese. And the argument was always, well, the Hiroshima and Nagasaki was sort of like, we let a lot of that go. But then also, we were working with them to fight the communists in China. Like, it's just our history. We just make allies. So anytime that's like, well, they're, Assad's a bad guy. Is he really? And the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, we're okay with what they like. This has been our crazy history because it gets even worse. Right. So the U.S. commitment to Chiang continued throughout the war. His defeat by the communists, and then he moved to Taiwan. So when he basically lost, he moved to Taiwan. That's why Taiwan and China have never really gotten along. We were actually on the brink of nuclear war with China on his behalf in 1955 and again in 1958 over Matsu and Quemoy, these 2 small islands off the coast of China. So I had no idea that any of this was happening after World War II, right? Oh, the Marshall Plan, we're rebuilding Japan, we're rebuilding Europe. Oh, but we're still fighting. And then this continues. So you talk about 55 and 58. Well, now wait a minute. Now that gets us into the Korean War, which was another proxy war with China.
Yeah.
Like another war.
I mean, the American government was truly horrified that not just communism, but really, workers like standing together was going to kind of infect America and take over America. And so there was a lot more favorable feelings towards, communism and the Soviet Union after World War II because they helped defeat Germany. So you have a lot of the Communist Party is doing well in some of these countries. And so the U.S. was just like, whoever we need to obliterate to make sure that our business elite can continue ruling the world is what we need to do.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like China and Russia were our allies, and then immediately we flip it, and people will say, well, Mao Zedong, he did a lot of oppressive stuff. Of course he did. But again, we just dropped two atomic weapons on two cities that didn't really need it, and to a country that was ready to surrender.
Yeah.
Who are we?
And I think that's the important thing. It's not like, we were fighting bad people a lot of the time.
Sure.
We were also allying with bad people a lot of the time. And I think the important fact is that at no point does America get involved militarily just to help people. That is like, it's never in the equation.
Right.
I mean, if we hadn't been, if it hadn't been interrupting business interests and we hadn't been attacked at Pearl Harbor, those are the things that got us into World War II, not the fact that millions of Jews were being rounded up and, unsummarily executed. That wasn't what got us into the war. So it's like we were fighting on the just side, but that wasn't what got us there.
Yeah, we did not want to be involved in World War II. And we were just like, yeah, not our problem. There was that ship of Jews that were escaping in the late 30s or 1940, I forget, that was like told, sorry, we don't want these refugees, not our problem. Like
if we wanted to stop the gas chambers, we would have bombed the rail lines.
Right. Exactly. It's like, and so there was a lot of like, not our problem. Kind of a thing.
But at least Coca-Cola changed their name to Fanta so that they could operate in Germany. So at least there was that going on.
Oh, sprinkling in some more Gov't Seeks. It's just a cavalcade. So yeah, man, it's like you unpack this stuff and you really see, especially just like I said, my history teacher, and I'm not mad at my history teacher, but he's just teaching us what he was told of this, like we had no choice to drop the bomb. Yeah. And then we didn't learn. Why did we just stop? We didn't learn anything. The first I read about our involvement in the Chinese Civil War was that episode a couple weeks ago that we did. Like that, just it's unbelievable. I didn't learn about Wallace till 2 years ago when I watched that Netflix special. I didn't even know who he was, and it's not a mistake that we never hear about him. We never hear about Hampton. We never hear about Eugene Debs. We never hear about any of these. We never hear the speeches of MLK. We've done episodes on MLK before of like, we only hear the "I have a dream" speech, beautiful speech, but we don't hear him talking about how awful capitalism and war is.
Yep, you don't hear him coming out against Vietnam War. You don't hear his anti-capitalism quotes. This is by design. It's not an accident that Henry Wallace is largely forgotten in history. I didn't know any of this either. I mean, my history classes in public schools in Richmond, Virginia, the most we'd get about the atomic bombs was, it was horrible, but we had to do it, and it got Japan to surrender. And before that, Japan was going to fight to the death, and we saved countless American lives by doing it. Yeah, horseshit.
Bullshit. All of it. It's just like this show. The reason why we have to joke around with each other is because it's so maddening that you realize everything we've been told in America is bullshit. And do the communists in China and other countries, propagandize their own people? Of course they do. But we can't pass an ounce of judgment. We're a 500-pound person telling somebody that's, got love handles, hey man, you shouldn't be eating those food. It's like,
listen, you really want a second cookie? Yeah.
It's like nuts. It's the guy with track marks going, oh, I think you're drinking too much, Lee. Oh,
right.
Really?
And
a heroin addict?
Yeah, exactly. And that's the key is like, so you learn this stuff, you learn this history, you know what America's been involved in, and you start to realize that when you hear our State Department, when you hear Mike Pompeo or whatever goon Biden will put in, when you hear all these people up there and say, we've got to get involved in country A, B, or C because we need to help those people. We need to go into Syria because of chemical weapons. We need to go into Iraq because they're doing this. We need to help people in Libya. Anytime you hear that, there are always ulterior motives. Even if it were true that certain people are exploited in country A, B, or C, even if that were the case, we don't give a fuck about that. We'll probably blow up that country and leave those people being exploited. We'll let the Kurds get gassed in Iraq after we leave. We don't actually care about those things. We care about, our business interests, our central banking, our oil resources. That is what really comes down. What was a study? It was covered in The Guardian back before The Guardian became garbage. That there's a study that Western countries are something like 70 or 90% more likely to get involved in another country's, battle or civil war if there's oil resources.
Oh yeah, dude. I mean, look, if you can butcher your own people, do whatever you want, as long as you give up your resources to America.
We'll sell you the knives to do the butchering.
Yes, good. You could eat the people. We'll live stream it. I don't care as long as the oil wells and the minerals for the cell phones keep going. Don't care.
Yeah.
But God forbid you don't give up those things. Then, man, anytime you raised your voice to one of your kids, we're going to call you a monster. Like, it's just like.
We heard Gaddafi was yelling at his kids, and so we had to go in there.
It's just it was really bad. I mean, Maduro, I'm told he was rude to a waiter once, so that's it. You can't just
he's still into spanking as a form of discipline, and we are very opposed to that. So it's time to bomb that country.
Yeah, sorry, baby. Here come the drones. You can't talk that way to your kids. So, well, I think that's it. I think that's our Gov't episode 19. Could be 20, but probably 19. I forgot to check.
And I'm going to say it's our best yet, going mainly off of amount of visible chest. So
really good. This is our best open chest episode.
Yeah.
And just a quick little thing. You're talking about, whatever cabinet state, whoever Biden puts in. I'm just going to put this, just Google, or not Google, but use ecosia.org. Don't use evil Google. Google web search Neera Tanden WikiLeaks. Just see what emails come up about her wanting to bomb countries for the resources or whatever. So just that's the all girl, female Biden diverse team of warmongering sociopaths. So that's the diversity of the ruling class that will keep the American war machine going. And that's how they trick Americans into think there's progress instead of a bunch of old white guys like Truman had. Now we have women, people of color that'll bomb and take resources and lie to the American people and spend money not on our own.
Graham, I don't appreciate your snark. That's called progress. All right, my friend.
It is
progress.
Oh, the people in the Middle East are going to be so excited. They're going to get bombed by women and people of color. They're so excited for it. They just
listen. Bombs shot out of a vagina have a whole different feel.
Yes.
They absolutely do.
Yes, they do. They're a completely different vibe. Well, folks, Government Secrets, subscribe. If you're a fan of one of us and new to the other guy, subscribe to both of our YouTube channels. But also, if you're listening to this on Government Secrets on iTunes or Spotify, download it. Positive reviews. We've gotten a bunch of great but all that stuff really helps. And then Lee, where can people follow all of your business?
Yeah, it's allleecamp.com. I have another podcast called Common Censored. I have a TV show called Redacted Tonight. I recommend you check out. I could give you different links for all these, but I'd say just go to leecamp.com and peruse all the stuff there. And my Twitter's at leecamp.
Sweet. My Twitter is at Graham Elwood. There's grahamelwood.com where you can join my Patreon. I also have a Rockfin. Lee and I are both on Rockfin, which is a blockchain cryptocurrency platform. It's the future, since literally I'm losing subscribers on YouTube because it's owned by Google, which is owned by the CIA. Anyway, side note, but my show is called Political Vigilante. Check it out, youtube.com/Graham Elwood. So just thank you for all of that, and follow us and like and share and subscribe, and all that stuff really helps the show.
Thanks a lot, guys. I will see you soon.
All right, Lee. Godspeed, buddy.
Later, man.
Bye. Thanks for watching, everybody. Please hit the like button, the subscribe button. Go to patreon.com/Graham Elwood and rockfin.com/Graham Elwood, where you can support the show. Also, I have a Bitcoin wallet, a Bitcoin Cash wallet, and an Ethereum wallet in the show notes. We're taking cryptocurrency. I have a Coinbase affiliation link. We're going to be getting on some other exchanges. So that's how you support the show. Make sure you hit the subscribe button. YouTube is unsubscribing us at an alarming rate. I have a PayPal button at grahamelwood.com. I even have a Venmo at Graham-Elwood. There's a lot of ways to support our show. We are getting crushed by YouTube. We've dipped under 73,000 subscribers because of YouTube. Thanks for supporting what we do.